Good evening. Welcome to this evening's Board of Education meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to share with the audience that if you need Spanish translation services, we have Lupita here to assist.
Good afternoon y buenas tardes. Nada más queríamos anunciar que si necesitan interpretación al español, aquí estoy para servirles.
Thank you, Lupita. On behalf of the board, we'd like to share a reminder regarding the process for public comments during board meetings. For each agendized action, discussion, or information-only item, the board will hear from staff, provide an opportunity for public comment, then hold a board discussion and vote if necessary. Public comment on non-agendized items will be heard during item 6, and public comment on closed session items will be heard during item 8 before adjourning into closed session. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are on the boards that are hold on, let me say public. I got distracted. I saw somebody come up. Non-agendas that are not on the board's agenda, but are within the board's jurisdiction. To help us organize public comment using this system, if you wish to provide a public comment, please complete a speaker card located at the entrance and provide it to our executive assistant, to the superintendent, Michelle, back here. Speaker cards for public comment will be accepted up to the calling for the public comment portion of that agenda item. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. I would now like to establish a quorum by roll call vote.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Here.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Here.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. May I receive a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
I'd like to remind the audience that the open session will be audio recorded, taped, broadcast on the district's YouTube channel. And Jake, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2, reports. These are routine status updates regarding campus activities, meeting schedules, conferences, meetings attended, and recent developments from our student representative and our unions, ACT and CSEA. We'll start with our student representative report with Colin Pritchard.
Hello. So Tular Cedos, next week they're having their No Screens Week. Pretty much just a time where they're trying to get more kids to focus on reading and less time on their screens. They're also having their book challenge and read night at Tular and the Kashawa Learning Center on March 6th, where students and families can come and listen to teachers read some books. Now, Captain Cooper, the entire school went on a field trip to the Sunset Center to see the Peking acrobats. They were lucky enough to have two of the acrobats visit prior to teach them a little bit about the culture aspects of the performance. Carmel Valley High just had their lab at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is a very big part of their curriculum. And then Carmel High School, the CHS boys basketball team just won their 6th game in a row, defeating the SoCal Knights, which is amazing. So ASB just started preparing for Balda grades, where essentially the different high school grades are competing. And the way that we grade it is based on their school spirit as well as games during lunch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colin. Next, we have our ACT report with President Elizabeth Marsh.
Hello. So good evening, CUSD school community. As this school board completes around your first 100 days in office, is that close? Okay. As ACT president, I'm starting my last 100 days in office. And it's been a tremendous honor to represent the most talented, dedicated educators around. I want to spend the bulk of my comments today thanking Lee Cambra, our vice president. Lee is among the most efficient people I've ever met. She's involved and knowledgeable in local, state, and national union issues, structures, and processes. No learning curve is too steep for her. She's saved me and our association countless times. And our local CTA service center has an award ceremony every year, and we can nominate deserving members to receive recognition. And of course, I nominated Lee, but guess who organizes the awards? Yes, Lee. And she, ever humble, she politely declined. So I couldn't honor her at that. So here I'm recognizing her here. She might be kind of mad at me about that, but that's okay. She needs recognition. So thank you very much, Lee. And I also wish to thank our bargaining team, Michelle DiGirolamo, Gina Walcott, Sarah Greco, Dana Redding, Elisa Ibsen, and Juan Gomez have been creative, flexible, strong, patient, and hopeful through days filled with challenges. By the way, our unit did ratify the tentative agreement around salary increase with a supermajority of our best voter turnout since we began voting electronically. And that's it. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next up, CSEA report with President Anna Medina.
Good evening. We just wanted to say thank you to the technology department for the amazing job they just did with the install and how quickly they went through. A majority of those members are CSEA, and we are very proud of the work that they were able to do, and wanted to thank you as well for approving that project and what is going to happen with the safety for our school district going forward. We also wanted to thank the district and our ACT unit members just for the negotiations and being able to get to our ratified agreement for the salary increase for all of our employees. It is greatly appreciated. So thank you again for all you guys do for us, and we will see you next month.
Thank you very much, Anna. Agenda item 3, superintendent report. These are routine status updates regarding campus activities, meeting schedules, conferences, and meetings attended, and recent developments from our superintendent, Sharon Offit.
All right, good evening, everyone. Life in CUSD continues to be full of activity with many moments of celebration. However, tonight I begin with the tragic news of the Robinson Canyon Barn, which was destroyed in a fire around midnight on Sunday, February 23rd. The district is working closely with the local fire officials who are actively investigating the cause of the fire. While the investigation is ongoing, I'm grateful to report that according to the investigator, there were no injuries or loss of life as a result of the fire. And obviously, I will continue to provide updates if I ever get any as to information that becomes available for us. Last week, during February break, a team of cabinet and board members participated in a webinar entitled Navigating the Brown Act. This session covered key topics such as the Brown Act before a meeting, Brown Act during a meeting. Just a few months ago, several board members also attended an in-person Brown Act training in Monterey. So as of now, the majority of the board has received Brown Act training in the last 6 months, which is fabulous. I have had the pleasure of attending the Carmel by the Sea Chamber of Commerce State of the City event yesterday, and it was an excellent opportunity to connect with the community and learn about potential ways in which our district, the Chamber of Commerce, and the City Council can collaborate moving forward. During the week of February 10th, and possibly the most exciting thing I think that I'm reporting out today, roughly 50 students, parents, staff, and community partners came together to engage in a strategic planning and visioning process. This is the first time in nearly a decade that members of the CUSD community came together to focus on creating an actionable direction for the district. This expertly facilitated session provided the opportunity to identify strengths as well as ways in which the CUSD experience could be enhanced. In addition to analysis of the current state, the group spent time providing input on the development of a clearly defined mission, vision, and core values. A writing team representing various levels within the district spent 2 days reviewing, evaluating, and synthesizing all of that input that was gathered during the session earlier in the week. The outcome of the writing process will be shared with that group to provide feedback, and a draft will also be presented to the Board of Education at for review, discussion, and input during a study session coming up this coming Monday. So we're excited to present that information and to have this forward view of Carmel Unified School District and where we want to head and how we're going to chart our course. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Next up, agenda item 4, consent calendar. The board may bundle a number of items and act upon them together in one motion through the use of a consent calendar. Consent agenda items are routine items deemed to be non-controversial for which the board discussion is not anticipated and for which the superintendent recommends approval. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the vote unless any members of the board request specific items to be removed for discussion. We do have one request for public comment. Number 1, Phil.
Good evening. I wasn't sure if this is the appropriate time to address it. It's one of the pay warrants in the accounts payable. Can I make a comment or a question? Is that appropriate? Okay. So this is for a professional development course for the ethnic studies curriculum, I think. It's called Facing History and Ourselves, professional development. Took place on January 10th. So my question was this for the ethnic studies curriculum, or was this general ed for all the teaching staff?
So public comment is public comment. The board can't respond to questions.
Okay.
You can share that, and you have.
Is
so-
there somebody I could talk to about that?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll reach out to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. There's no other public comment, and if nobody's requesting anything to be removed, may I receive a motion to pass the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second. Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Agenda item 5A, Ethnic Studies Update with Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Coordinator Andrew Rodriguez.
So while Andrew comes up, I'm just going to share that this topic has been garnering quite a bit of attention across the state, and you'll hear quite a bit about it tonight. But this is an informational update around what has been happening since our previous update back in October. So we can certainly, around the discussion time, talk about what the sort of current trend in what's currently happening in the state around the funding of this program.
Okay, how's my volume? Okay, that's a lot better than the last few times that I've done this, so. All right, so good evening. My name is Andrew Rodriguez. I'm Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Coordinator for the Carmel Unified School District, and today I'll be presenting an update on the Ethnic Studies course that we're currently in development with. And oh, okay. There we go. Thank you. All right, so we've started off with this this slide a few times when I've come to the to present to the board, and so this one's about Assembly Bill 101, which was signed in October 8th of 2021, and it mandates two things out of the Assembly Bill. Number one is that all students beginning with the class of 2030 will be required to take a semester-long course that fulfills the ethnic studies requirement. And then the second one is that all high schools offer a course that fulfills the ethnic studies requirement beginning with the in the 2025-2026 school year. And so that's not new news. Now there is a stipulation that I wanted to make sure that we're all aware of before we get into the presentation of the information, and it's just about some of the issues that have come up in probably the last month and a half regarding the funding and legislative concerns. And so written inside of the into AB 101, what it states is that ethnic studies requirement is contingent upon appropriation. And so the upon appropriation piece is actually the kind of the hinge point here, because during the governor's January budget update, when they provided the update for that, what we noticed was that it did not include funding for the ethnic studies mandate. And so that created a lot of confusion, and I think that we've been asking a lot of questions of what that actually means. And there have been slivers of kind of answers to this, and one of the biggest ones came out of the California Department of Finance, and their position is that since there has been no appropriation, since there was no appropriation, there's no mandate to implement this course at this point. Now, with that stated, though, that doesn't mean that the future update to the budget, because right now the budget isn't set in stone, and so we will be receiving additional information on that. And so it is potential that in May or even June that we can get additional information, and that might turn around and the money might be appropriated, or there might be an adjustment to the bill where the appropriation piece might be amended and kind of sent back and revoted on. And so there are a lot of different things that might happen, and so what we want to do on our end is make sure that we're kind of prepared in all cases. And so with that, we made the decision to continue to move forward in January and continue our work. And so what you'll see today is kind of a continuation of that. And so starting off in May, and I just wanted to, just because I know that we have some new board members, give you a little bit of historical updates of kind of where we've been and then where we're going. And so starting off in May, what we know is what we asked to convene a committee. And so that was our Ethnic Studies Materials Adoption Recommendation Committee. And so that was formed in May. And then from May through August, we had a number of meetings. And through those meetings, we wanted to determine kind of what is our focal point. And so there was a number of different ways that the course could be implemented. And so it could be either implemented as a standalone course, or it could be integrated into multiple courses. What we found was that with the integration, a lot of the schools that are doing the integration method also have a standalone course. And so we talked to the counselor that's on our team, and she mentioned that if we had just it infused in, let's say, for example, English, or had it infused in history, there's no guarantee that every single student would be able to take that course. And so that's why in places like Pajaro Valley, they have a number of different offerings where students can kind of meet that requirement. And so the majority of places in the state of California do have a standalone course, and that's the method that we opted to go with. With that stated, we started designing the course with 11th grade in mind as a standalone course that would be a semester long. From there, during the month of September, we had some planning sessions, and we had a subcommittee work on the actual planning, and that was presented in October to the board. And then since then, we had a secondary subcommittee kind of take some of the information that was or take the board feedback and then implement it into the course outline that was posted. And so you'll have a chance to review that, and we'll be going over some of the major pieces today there. And so once the subcommittee came back, then it went back to the main committee for additional review. And so what you'll notice is that chapter or unit 1, 2, and 3 tend to be pretty well fleshed out. Unit 4, which was the kind of the more difficult one as we were planning, you'll notice that it doesn't have the current resources inside of that section, and that's still because it's a work in progress. But we wanted to make sure that everyone had access to kind of the most recent update on that. Now, with that stated, we do have our 4 units. And so the first unit, which is Who Am I? Ethnic Studies and Individual Identity. During the board presentation last time, there was kind of mixed views on whether or not we should create a kind of take that unit and then break it into 2, or keep it as a single unit. And so we opted to, after discussion, keep it as a single unit for right now. But we could understand the idea that it could be 2 different units of kind of what is ethnic studies as maybe a unit 0, and then going into an individual identity unit. Unit 2 is Where Am I? Origins, Movement, and Identity, exploring local and community history. That's the one that I'm most excited about. And number 3 is Why Do I Matter? Historical Perspectives of Systems of and Power. And you'll notice that one is, as we were having our own discussions about kind of prejudice and having discussions about stereotypes and things like that, we wanted to make sure that we address it fully, and that was something that was unanimous within our committee. And so Unit 3 does address a lot of those pieces. And then Unit 4 is What Can Citizens Do to Be More Civically Engaged? And that one is really the one that we spent the most time reworking in order to come up with something that we all feel is positive for our students. Now, I'm not going to read through the entire overviews for these, but the overviews are found inside of the board documents, and then it's also found inside of the course outlines as well. And so just a little bit about this one, though. This one is dealing with kind of individual identity, and the idea is to give students a basis of individual identity and how identity is formed, not only formed by individuals, but also formed by the society in which they live, and how identity also helps distinguish or helps kind of color our own worldviews as well. And that serves as a foundation, though, as we get into other pieces. So using it too, for example, looking at like our local community and looking at how community identity has been shaped by a number of different factors. And so this one deals with kind of not only migration and diverse groups, but it also really focuses in on the local history because we have a very rich and colorful history. And we want to make sure that we identify those things. If you take a look at the resources that are available in Unit 2, we've been working to gather a lot of different resources from local organizations and kind of local pieces, not only things that we're familiar with, but also reaching out as well. I think one of the ones that I really liked was from the JACL, which is the Monterey petition. And there's a whole unit study on that one, and it's dealing with not only Japanese internment, but also the aftermath of how community came together to really bring people back and assist them in any way that they could, including the Monterey petition. Moving into Unit 3, as we mentioned, this one's dealing with historical perspectives of systems of power. And it does deal with starting off with stereotypes and then moving into things like laws and policies that have had impact on different communities. And I believe that there's a really good opportunity as well to link up Unit 2 and 3 with regards to how community has kind of faced these and how certain laws that have existed inside of our own areas have affected different communities as well. And then finally, Unit 4. This one initially, when we brought this last time, was dealing with the seal of civic engagement. And we've kind of, we had a lot of really honest discussions with each other, and we had some feedback from the board. And what we opted to do was kind of table that concept for right now. And the idea was that although the seal of civic engagement is a great idea, and it is California approved and also something that's supported, at the same time trying to figure out whether or not this is the best place for that right now at this moment. And so we still are looking at a capstone project, and so we're trying to figure out to kind of how we close this course, what that might look like. And so we've, although it's not inside of the document, we've talked about maybe doing like a podcast activity at the end and having students maybe, interview someone from like a different ethnic group and kind of bring that in and put together, like compile something that's kind of like a community diary or something similar. And so we still have some ideas open, and I think that we have some very creative people on our group as well. And so I'm really excited to see what we come up with. Now, one more thing here, and this is just about how the course outline works itself. And so you notice that we wanted to make sure that we had as much information as possible here so that people can see how the course kind of might play out. And so right at the top, you'll notice that we have our essential questions, which we went over last time, and then we also have kind of the course summary, or the unit summary, excuse me. From there, you'll see the learning targets. And we went ahead and we put down our kind of readings and resources, some possible activities, as well as some potential vocabulary. Now, one thing that, as we were building this, that we really took to heart as a group was that we wanted to make sure that we put trust in our teachers and make it flexible enough that it's not a plug and play and I get this and this is exactly what I'm teaching. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that there's a standard that's not only aligned to California state standards, but also just a standard in general that this is going to be, it is an ethnic studies course. And we wanted to make sure that it's true to that as well. And so there's enough flexibility in there to adjust things. And I think that the way that it's set up, it's also very similar to, but not exactly the same as other districts. And so as we go through the implementation, we'll have other places to draw off of and maybe send people for visits and things like that. So with that said, though, I think that there's some really good information, and I'm excited to hear some of the questions that you might have a little bit later. Looking at our next steps, we are slated for a community engagement night next week, where we'll be we sent out an invite, and we're hoping to kind of get some feedback on the courses. And so we've been looking at different types of structures, but our hope is to really get authentic feedback and make it actionable. And then I think the other thing is just the additional revisions. I think the resources part, because one of the biggest things that we're running into right now is that there is no textbook for this course. The closest thing which we've added into the resources right now is a book that some places are using, but the issue with it is some of the readability, and there's like it's a little basic. But at the same time, though, talking to our EL teacher as well as our SPED teacher that's on the committee, that actually might be advantageous because it makes the materials a little bit more accessible too. And so we still have some conversations to go with that. And the process of going through document by document and trying to vet it, it's a pretty arduous process when you don't have a textbook. And so I have been reaching out to additional vendors to identify some potential textbooks that we can review. And so far, I've only seen 2 that are even somewhat viable. And even then, though, those are going to be part of a larger discussion. And so I wanted to make sure to thank you for that, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Andrew. We have 2 requests for public comment before we get to board discussion. First, we'll start with Phil.
Hello, I'm a community member and a parent. My wife and I met with Mr. Rodriguez and we expressed our support for the ethnic studies curriculum. We also discussed the many rich and varied ethnic stories that could and should be studied by our kids, especially here in California and the Central Coast. These are the uplifting stories that explain what being an American is all about. In this draft of the curriculum, the main focus is still on hardship, oppression, and injustice. The curriculum draws heavily from the writings of educators like Howard Zinn and Paulo Freire, who suggest that the system is to blame for these wrongs. And while I disagree with the conclusions of these authors as to specific causes, I do think these stories are important to tell because they describe just how far we have come as a nation. No denying that many ethnic groups experienced horrendous persecution. For those individuals, it was the American nightmare, not the American dream. However, what is missing from this narrative are the success stories. There are countless stories about the American experience in which, despite tremendous hardship and injustice, individuals overcame these obstacles to lead productive and rewarding lives. Where are these stories of hope and inspiration? I will say that Unit 4 has been improved. I like the seal of civic engagement. That's a good one. Some of the action steps are helpful and constructive. Even the essential vocabulary in Unit 4 contains several optimistic concepts such as self-determination, empowerment, healing, and transformation. These are all helpful considerations for moving on from the past and ensuring the promises made in our U.S. Constitution are kept. Finally, I would add the word accountability to the vocabulary list. And by that I mean holding our government representatives accountable to enforce the rule of law, as well as holding ourselves accountable to know our role as citizens in a constitutional republic. Accountability will go a long way towards ensuring that there is no tolerance for oppression. And on this point, I think both Howard Zinn and Paulo Freire would agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Next contestant is Shell.
All right, hello everyone. Tonight, Andrew shared with you board members tonight one of the attachments that was included in the ethnic studies content agenda. There is another attachment that is actually a proposed draft, working draft of the ethnic studies course. My comments are in regards to that draft. There are 2 main problems with this ethnic studies draft curriculum. The first problem is the curriculum seems to overemphasize and concentrate only on the negative and not also on the positive interactions between cultures and the progress that has been made throughout the decades. It predominantly pushes a victimhood ideology and anger and hate. Instead of being a course that equally presents the challenges and successes of ethnicities, it seems like the goal of the course is for students to identify with how they or their ancestors have been discriminated against or how they were the discriminators. The second problem is the course is being misrepresented. It is being titled Ethnic Studies, But from the draft presented to the board tonight, the curriculum is not just about ethnic studies and culture, but also about teaching sexuality and gender ideology. An example of this is that one of the listed assignments is the gender unicorn activity. Since the state of California never provided the promised funding for this class, it is no longer law to require this course at this time. Therefore, our school district and school board should consider that this class not be part of Carmel High School's graduation requirements. If this class is going to be offered at all, we ask that the curriculum be more balanced with less negative, divisive content. We also ask that the class content is only about ethnicities and not sexuality. If these changes be made, the ethnic studies class would have more community support, would much better serve the students, and would keep the school district out of legal issues. Thank you. Those are my comments tonight. I do have a copy of the reference I made to the content in this draft that's being misrepresented as ethnic, but is not. And I'll hand that to Michelle or
Perfect.
Jason.
Yep, that's it, Michelle. And she'll pass it out to everybody. Thank you for your comments. Since there's no other public comment, we will open this up for board discussion and questions, starting with Rita.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. So for me, I'm coming into this, three of us were just elected in December, and so we're coming into it almost midstream, even towards the end, actually. And so for when you guys were analyzing this course, who was on the committee? Were students on the committee? If you could share a little bit, I guess, more details about how we got to the point to today, because I don't have any of the history. And then as far as the funding goes, can we tap into LCAP funding for a course like this, or if the state doesn't, doesn't allow any allocations for it? And I was talking to my husband about this course, being a minority myself and experiencing hardships growing up. He had some interesting takes as well, and so I'd want to acknowledge the two community members that did speak, and I do also would like to talk about or share more of the positives and contributions that minorities make, and also I guess we could talk about the history, but I also want to talk about the progress we've made and where we were and where we've come and where we will go in the future. I don't like myself to be considered a victim. I don't want to talk about all the past, I guess, oppression that even my culture experienced, because I think we've made a lot of progress in the United States. So I'd like to see if we could also, I've read through some of the articles, and I don't know if there's more articles that we could reference for the students to see that we are a good country, and we're not a perfect country, right? But I think it's important for kids nowadays, especially, to understand.
I turned it off, sorry. I would like to just jump in and comment on the funding, because that is what has sort of hit the headlines recently. And Andrew went into detail about upon appropriation and what that means. I've reached out to considerable number of partners in Sacramento that we rely on for updates around what's happening in Sacramento with the legislature and what they're doing in terms of funding requirements for school districts. In the past, since COVID, the legislature has really created mandates that are requirements and not left a flexibility to the school districts. One of the things is in this situation here is that upon appropriation has caused quite a bit of controversy because so many school districts up and down the state have struggled with this. And the sentiment, at least from the education lobbyists in Sacramento, is that there is a strong interest from the legislature to make this happen. every single one of those organizations that I've reached out to has advised us to proceed as though it's going to happen, because they do believe that the Legislative Analyst Office is going to appropriate funding by the time the budget gets approved in June. It's just a really unfortunate sequence of timing for school districts like us that are taking our time to really analyze, learn from the mistakes of other places, analyze, look at how do we provide real transparency and clarity. Like, for example, the document that was referenced by a speaker, right? In other districts, that level of detail hasn't even been provided. So we're like putting it all out there, soliciting feedback, trying to have, it's a tough topic. So, and from the get-go, it was controversial from the very inception of this program. But we have been told to plan on it happening, plan on it being implemented. The only thing that's kind of up in the air is whether or not they add in an extension on the implementation timeline, right? Because right now, is a requirement for the graduating class of 29-30, but you must offer a course in the 25-26 school year. If that gets extended a year, we have a lot more time. If it doesn't, then we have to have the course on our books. It doesn't mean we have to run it, but we have to have it on our books. We have to, as a board, adopt it. We have to have it available. It doesn't mean we can't revise it and all these other things. That's how our best instruction happens, right? You implement, you learn, you revise, you go back and forth. That's what teachers do to make it aligned to what the requirements are, but also what is best for the community that we're in. So I know that there's a lot of unanswered questions. Believe me, I am like, what do we do? Because it's down to the line. And we also believe in that with the funding, there will be mandated revisions to the course, which is why the sentiment is that there would be a possibility for an extension of implementation by a year. So we'll see. They didn't do that with us coming out of COVID with independent study, for example. They just gave us 2 weeks to make it happen. So, but we're watching it closely, and I'm literally everything I go to, this is one of my questions. What's happening with ethnic studies?
Yeah.
Where are we? I want us to be thorough. I want us to be clear. I want us to respond to feedback. I want us to create a course that aligns to what the requirements are, but also, again, aligns to what our community is interested in having. And I think Andrew and the team have done an amazing job of scouring all of the resources available. It is no easy feat. It is not out there widely available. And also trying to respond to feedback. So I think they've done a pretty amazing job. But the funding piece, probably, based on what I've heard from people like former State Superintendent of Schools Jack O'Connell and people at that level, they are saying there's a real interest in the legislature to make this happen.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and-
we don't have to, it's actually a requirement in 29-30.
So
Is
it's
that correct?
the AB 101 says it's a graduation requirement for the class of 29-30, and that second bullet, you must begin offering a
Yeah.
course. Offering, it's different than running. Offering a course in the 25-26 school year, which is next year. So that's the tricky part,
Okay.
because we're right there.
Yeah. So we can continue. I mean, this is a very important course, right? I think all of us respect it. We feel like it's necessary, and we want to give it justice, right? And so it sounds like we can tweak it, though, as we go till maybe 29-30. We can offer it now.
Well, I
but
think
make
no matter
adjustments.
what, right? Like,
Okay.
I don't know,
'Cause
100
I don't
years ago
wanna
when the district
oppress one
started, we had
certain group.
biology, right? And
Yeah.
people adjust the biology curriculum all the time,
Yeah.
right? Or we have world history, or we do new adoptions. So courses get adjusted constantly with new cycles of state frameworks being released and instructional materials programs becoming available, and all the whole vetting process for that.
Okay.
So courses are not, they shouldn't be static. They should evolve over time. And I truly believe that our teachers do that. They look at what the current trends are, they look at what's available to them, they look at the new programs, the evolution of the frameworks released by the state, and we adopt. We are fortunate in Carmel Unified that we have all of our instructional materials programs are all aligned to the current materials that are available with the most current adoptions. So, but
Okay.
things
Yeah, I think we
should
want to educate
evolve.
the students. I mean, we want to lift everyone up. I don't want to oppress one group to benefit another group. I want this to be an educational experience for all students.
And I will say that we've had that discussion inside of our group, and I don't think that the anyone on the committee that's the purpose. And you have to also remember too, this isn't a ethnic studies at its core is not a cultural exploration class, and so there are other factors that make an ethnic studies course an ethnic studies course, and so and I think that's kind of the difficulty of crafting a course like this is understanding, what is age appropriate, and also, which parts do we want to make sure that we're aligning with academia, but at the same time making sure that we're keeping community in mind as well. And so I think that there's a lot of nuance with a lot of these discussions. And what you wouldn't want to do is offer an ethnic studies course and then have a student like, oh man, I'm really excited about ethnic studies, I'm going to major in that. And then they get surprised because this is not what they signed up for. And so I think that there has to be a level of honesty though too when it comes to offering an ethnic studies course. And so we've been using the a lot of different frameworks, looking at in different models to kind of help flesh that out. And I think that we do have a level of expertise inside of the room as well to have these discussions. And we've been very mindful. The course has been thoughtful with, not only our students in mind, but our community in mind as we went through each part of the process. And that's why you see some of the revisions that we made from last time. We do listen. I did want to go back to the initial question that you asked about kind of who's on the Ethnic Studies Committee. And so we do have a number of teachers. And so so I've been doing a lot of the facilitation along with a lot of the research as well and bringing the research in. And so I've looked at model curriculums from at least 50 different schools and districts around the state in order to identify what are some definite trends. And then also what's going to be supportable too. Because one of the things about ethnic studies is that you don't have dedicated individuals, like an individual credential for ethnic studies at this moment. And so what that means is that a person that's going to be teaching this course, it's found under their history credential. And so because of that, they have to have a level of comfort as well. And we want to make sure that we create a course where a person can step in. And obviously we want to find the right person. Like that's number one. But at the end of the day though, we want to make sure that the curriculum is portable enough that people can step in and with their history credential be able to teach this course. We also brought in mind though that this can be interdisciplinary, and so we have people from art, we have people from English as well. And then we have a special education teacher, we have a English ELD teacher as well, who are taking a look at the materials and making sure that it's appropriate for all of our students and that the material is going to be accessible, because if it is a requirement for graduation, we want to just ensure that it's also accessible to all students. So hopefully that answers that question.
We'll move on to Matt.
I guess I want to expand on that, which is I'm always curious about the process. So you have a group of people that are representing a variety of elements in the district. Can you just speak to kind of your comfort, your confidence that you bring this forward, that you have undergone a really profound process? You've explored, you're looking at the community, you're looking at 50 other jurisdictions and what they're doing and what the trends in this education are. And then you're bringing to us an idea that is really well researched. Mm-hmm. It's not flying by the seat of anybody's pants.
Okay, so this is exciting actually, and so I think the initial discussion, and I think it actually starts off with our first meeting. So prior to our first meeting that we had as a committee, I did a profound amount of research with because I wanted to make sure that we have a really solid understanding. My background is religious studies. I did a lot of interfaith work prior to kind of the work that I do right now. And so although it's not ethnic studies per se, I think that there's a lot of commonalities between the two. And so I'm very cognizant about kind of the way that words work, and kind of being mindful about kind of the cause and effect that we have when we do things. With that said, though, on the actual committee itself, though, we do have a person who has expertise in implementing an ethnic, as kind of part of a larger district, implementing an ethnic studies framework. And so we went ahead and kind of tapped into that as well for some of the pre-meetings. And when we stepped in on the in our first meeting, though, I think that there was definitely a level of expertise within our history department that I was really impressed with, and understanding like all the nuances within the actual standards themselves. And people were excited about being able to offer ethnic studies. Our first discussion was actually whether or not we wanted to go as a standalone course or not. And people were like, well, we can, have an ethnic studies English course, we can have an ethnic studies art course. And they're like, yeah, here's some things that I'm already doing inside of my class to teach cultural this and that. And we had a lot of these discussions, and so we kept it on the table until we looked at really student schedules. And I think that having a counselor on the group was able to kind of tamp down some of those ambitions and really make it look at what's realistic, because we do have other graduation requirements coming down the pike. One of them is going to be financial literacy. And we're in a prime position right now with a semester-long course for ethnic studies to add that in as a companion course. And so the way that the state rolled it out was very unfortunate, because a lot of schools are having to rethink the way that they have their current schedule set up. And so I think that that was part of the discussion that we had looking forward, thinking with student schedules, is the potentiality for 11th grade and looking at financial literacy as well. And when is that like a quality course to offer, and like what grade level? And so we kept all those things in mind. And I don't want to be long-winded with this, but as we continued through, though, I think that everyone did their homework before coming to committee meetings, had a lot to contribute, and brought a lot of expertise and resources. And we had, I think the hardest part obviously has been just time, but we've maximized the time that we've had in order to to take a look at this course and offer something solid. Now, with that said, though, can there still be work to do? I think so. I think that continuing to reach out to our community partners. I know that we've entered into, and I don't want to name drop because I don't think that's appropriate, and we don't want to use I guess organizations as kind of crutches for this, but we have entered into some partnerships, and we're going to continue to do that in order to make sure that we're representing true history. Because at the end of the day, I think at one of the sessions that I went to, they talked about just the importance of having people that have actually lived these experiences at the table to kind of tell their own stories as well. And I really took that to heart. And as we're looking at resources, I'm trying to be very mindful, and we're trying to be very mindful as a committee as we continue through.
Just a couple other questions, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
One is around Unit 4. I understand it's still a work in progress, and that's great. To make sure, I would want to make sure that Unit 4 included being nimble in the modern era as far as current events go. The word constitutional republic was brought up, and that is a key piece of the modern civic engagement, and teaching students as an objective of how to engage with government and civics as our culture evolves and as what we understand to be civic engagement changes. Mm-hmm. I think that is key, and that can be really student-led. And so just in the thinking around Unit 4, and I wasn't here for earlier conversations, so I guess that's more of a comment than a question. And then the other is probably actually more for Sharon than for you, but that is the intersection between the strategic plan and looking forward and bringing in new curriculum, and how where do those cross? Did it come up, and how does it shape the evolution of this of this curriculum.
I'd like to at least start off with this one, just
Yeah.
because this is something that we actually discussed as a committee. And one of the things that we started off a lot of our meetings with was understanding that we're building a course. And so there's other things, other factors, like when we're talking about teaching students empathy, for example, and teaching students cultural cultural respect, and also responsibility within a democracy. These are all important things. And so the course isn't going to fix all those things. And not saying maybe fix isn't the right word, because that assumes that there's a problem, right? But I think that understanding that this has to work in tandem with other factors within the student's curriculum. And so that was one of the nice things, that when we had our first full day planning, understanding how many things were already in place inside of other courses that could help support this work. And also some things where we see areas to grow as well. And so I just wanted to at least kind of put that forth before, if Sharon wants to chime in additionally.
Sure. So, focus. There are several focus areas in the strategic plan, and the very first one is student achievement and instruction. So that being said, a strategic plan isn't every 100% of everything we do. It's what do we need to highlight, and what do we need to look at to make our district better than it is today by 2030, right? That was our objective, our goal in terms of our conversations. So this is a requirement from the state at this point, unless we hear otherwise. That's basically the guidance we've been given, because everyone believes that the funding and the appropriation will be coming through. And regardless of whether it happens now or in a year from now, this is not going away. So just like all of our other courses, this is a graduation requirement that has been pushed out by the California legislature. So we have to do this no matter whether we have a strategic plan or not, right? So, but the strategic plan, of course, wants to produce successful students, right? So at this point, you'll see more on Monday, but we're working on, finalizing that presentation so we can post it by the end of the week. But things more broad around data-informed decision-making, or a multi-year professional learning plan for our teachers so they can stay current in what the practices are and not get stuck in old instructional strategies of engagement with students, and continue to modernize, as you pointed out. Things like that. It's a little bit more high level right now. And once those objectives are accepted and approved by the board, then we can sit down and look at those objectives and flesh out an action plan and metrics around how are we going to do that? What does that actually mean? Where is that a 1-year thing? Do we start that in year 1? Do we start it in year 3 of this 5-year thing? Is it all the years? Like, there's more to it. This is the beginning, right? I'm not going to pull together a team of people to flesh out an action plan for an objective that the board doesn't support. That's a waste of our time and resources. So it's multiple steps along the way, but it's a little bit more broad than calling out ethnic studies. I would say the main thing that's called out in our strategic plan right now is literacy, because if our students can't read and write and comprehend at grade level or above, we have a bigger problem. So, and that's a big issue across the state of California. So that's probably the most specific objective at the moment. But that doesn't mean that once these ideas are discussed and approved that we aren't going to flesh out in an action plan underneath it some more detail.
Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the continued effort that's been ongoing with yourself and the committee that's involved in pulling together this ethnic studies program. I know there are, as we discussed, a lot of moving parts, so I do appreciate all the time and the effort. And my comments tonight about the presentation, less questions, more just food for thought. First and foremost, I want to thank you and the committee for pulling together the community engagement night. I think that is really important, that the community has time to ask questions, discuss their concerns, and sort of air out their thoughts and their feelings about this course, because I think there is quite a bit of misinformation out there about what this course is and is not. And to that point, just food for thought, I would love to hear in that community engagement night what the difference between a cultural exploration course is versus what the ethnic studies course is. Because again, I think there is some confusion about what's what and what's included in each of those courses potentially. So I think that just, again, food for thought about that for that night. And then lastly, I know that you mentioned that the committee is being very mindful about the courses and the descriptions and what the curriculum therein lies in each of the ones that you stated 1 through 4. I would love for the committee to consider the language that's being used. I feel like words like power and activism can potentially have some negative connotation. I think that we all know that power can be used and misused, and I also believe that the word activism, in the current state of affairs of what's going on sort of globally, that can also have a negative connotation. So I don't know if there's conversation about renaming the courses or if these are static, but I would love to revisit using words such as those in the proposed course framework. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Can I just flash back on that? Sorry.
Go for it.
I had also jotted down the word power, and so as a suggestion, I wonder if power in the course name for Unit 2, if you really mean an exploration in authority, and if that's what that means, and if it doesn't, then a broader exploration in what that word means, because I agree that there's some charge there.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, and then just to sort of clarify, Mike, so when you talked about civil engagement, I would believe that underneath civil engagement, right, there may be something about activism or about, how to, whatever that means, right, how to bring to light your thoughts or your feelings in a more global perspective, whatever the curriculum describes. So I'm just concerned about the language and why it's necessary to use that word, because I feel like civil engagement is sort of an umbrella where that could potentially fall underneath, and it doesn't necessarily need to be called out specifically, such as the word power.
You're up.
All right. I'm excited, Andrew. This is, I think, your process. What I want to start up front is that I think this process was all-encompassing and comprehensive. And I believe, too, it was crossed a lot of boundaries, which, to me, one of my favorite lines, and if somebody out there wants to stitch it into a pillow, and I'll keep it with me forever, is I think this is a model to be used to break down silos. Breaking down silos, I think, is really important, and I think this demonstrates a good model of that. And so I really appreciate your work, Andrew, and like you, I'm very excited. I want to echo Sharon's comments in my other wheelhouses of activity that I have. I do agree with Sharon that this requirement is a go. There's nobody in Sacramento that believes this is not going to happen. So I believe it is the best foot forward that this district prepare to be prepared for the current requirement as it is outlined in AB 101. But what I want to talk about tonight is when the state makes the requirement of districts to implement a required course, and especially in or grade 11, that's where you guys settled, which I'm totally fine with. But what does that mean for student schedules? And what does that mean in terms of availability of classes and electives?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's also something that part of a very difficult discussion, because we have a lot of really robust course offerings at the high school, and so making sure that students have access to the full litany of kind of the plethora of classes that are available is very important. And if you take a look at at some of the courses that were approved in December, for example, we see that the course offerings are, continuing to grow as well. Teachers are very excited to, offer up something that, that they feel is going to be valuable to students. With that said, though, as we add more courses in, we understand that it puts a strain on student schedules. And I think if you take a look at the initial, because we had also played around with the idea of a 9th grade course and potentially moving, what's the class called? The history one? Sorry.
AP Hug.
Yeah.
AP Human Geography.
Yeah, and so
and Geography.
Yeah, and so taking human geography and making a replacement, and so replacing it with that course, and then that would fit nice and neat. However, with additional things that are coming down from the state, and it creates some more complications. And so if we would have went down that route, it actually would have just kind of prolonged the issues with scheduling, because then you have a single course, which would be financial literacy, that's now hanging by itself. And so we had a lot of discussions with our counselors and kind of looking at what's best. And I don't think that there's an easy solution to these types of things, and we don't know what's going to come down from the state in the future. I know that there was a, which just got rejected, by the way, which was the technology requirement with computer science. And so that one was, had a lot of momentum, and it might come back.
So, and this, just so everyone's aware, computer science has come and gone at the state level multiple times in the last decade. They've pushed it, and then it gets rejected, and then they push it, and it gets rejected. And the legislature, as I said earlier, is definitely more top down than it has been historically in the state since COVID. To be honest, they're like, you will do these things. So there's many mandates, many of them for our district, Carmel Unified, which is a basic aid community funded district, that are unfunded mandates. So we're in this situation where we have to constantly weigh our existing and current programming with what's coming down from the state that's going to be required, and really looking at the nuanced language around that. So it's very interesting. But the financial literacy class was approved in July. And they've been cranking through that, sending out information with standards and potential course requirements and all kinds of stuff in the last 6 months. So they're moving pretty quickly. And it's, fortunate or unfortunate. I think personal finance could be fabulous. I think it's, excuse me, I think it's a good course that our students probably will definitely benefit from, having some kind of course like that prior to going off it to live on their own or go to college and whatnot. But, it does put tension on the schedule and the requirements. Carmel High School is currently reviewing the graduation requirements, and we're having conversations with the high school around that policy and what's coming in, because we have to adjust it and adopt a new policy around graduation requirements because of this course and others coming down the pike. So while we're doing that, they're looking at the A to G completion requirements, because we want, in theory, any student who leaves our system to be A to G eligible. So if our graduation requirements are not in alignment with the A to G requirements, then we're shutting doors for our students once they leave. And we're a public education institution, and we should be making sure doors are open for kids. So that's a good conversation happening at the high school around graduation requirements. But there is no doubt that kids will have tighter schedules, and they will not have free periods, and they will be required to take a lot more credits and whatnot than they used to.
So to just follow up with that, right, there's what Sharon is saying, and for the members of the public, right, that there's a lot of complex stuff that comes from the state. And so I would encourage the district and yourself, right, to work with your associations or respective associations, right, and you try to make sure our input is provided to the state, because the state is providing mandates that we have to follow, and then that gets really complicated. And I will just say I'm a huge advocate of flexible schedules because I benefited from that at Carmel High School in the dark ages, the old days. And I'm here today, I think, because of some of those free periods that I took advantage of and took classes in that were important to building life skills and a foundation that I stand on today. And so I would encourage your group, and I know you have, and the whole district and everybody to make sure that we are still making sure that students have free periods and they have the availability to choose some things that they might be interested in to help them build their life skills. The other thing I wanted to ask, because I'm very close to some of the local history here in the area, and I love our local history, and so I'm very glad that this is something that's included. Can you talk a little bit about how you incorporated some of the local history into your discussions and into this draft?
Yeah, I think this was actually part of the some of our initial discussions about, if you take a look at the ethnic studies model curriculum, one of the things that they mentioned is the importance of including local voice. And we wanted to kind of take that a little bit further because we understand that, the Monterey region just has a really rich history and a lot of maybe untold history as well. And looking at the way that the social studies standards are written, like there's opportunities for it, but it's just about finding time. And so having a course where we can, have that time to tell these histories and be able to highlight that is very important. I think that was part of our some of our initial discussions. And really linking up even personal family histories and how they relate to other histories, because at the end of the day, it's not about all these differences. It's all about looking at all the similarities and how at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all have similar experiences. And I think that that really built a lot of the foundation of the work that we were doing initially to help identify that. And so, and we continue to, to look for resources and find resources. And I think that there's a lot of untapped potential inside of the region as well to continue those discussions. And so we've been happy to, to have those discussions, and we're looking forward to, as we continue through this process, we don't think that even once the course goes through for approval, we want to continue those discussions and continue to build this out.
And have you collaborated with anybody outside of this district, like other districts in our county?
Districts in our county, I've had some, we'll say off-books discussions, but there's been a lot of, and so I won't even count that. This percent I didn't strike from the rougher. I'll just say though that this has been on my mind from even a few years ago. My daughter just took an ethnic studies course at Monterey High recently, and the way that her experience was, I want to make sure that we can make it even better than what she had. And so I think that those things are very important to me, and I get a lot of feedback from people that I know that teach the course currently, and also some of the pitfalls too that they've encountered with the teaching of this course. And those were part of some of our initial discussions too, with looking at grade level and maturity. And you'll see that some of the districts that have been offering it at lower grade levels have been looking at making some adjustments because of some of the issues that they've run into.
And I'll just add in that we have really looked across the state to see what's happening. There isn't a week that goes by that there isn't some news article about ethnic studies in some other part of the state. And paying attention to what's happening elsewhere to make sure we don't step in those potholes is really important to me and to Andrew and to Dr. Mary Petty. We have conversations pretty routinely.
Yeah, weekly.
I would say weekly, even just casually, passing each other at lunch or whatever, in the kitchen, whatever, it doesn't matter. But we are really trying to be mindful of how to provide a course that aligns to the requirements, and is good for our community. So learning from where other people have had missteps has been invaluable. And I think you guys know I have no shame in picking up a phone and calling people in other districts and saying, oh my gosh, what happened? Tell me more. So, and I do talk to superintendents in other districts. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I have a couple questions. The community engagement night, is that open to the general public, and what day is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be open to everyone. We're still figuring out the last minute logistics, but the idea is to not only kind of have a presentation of the course like we've had today, but also have printouts of the resources for people to actually go around, take a look, and kind of make comments on it and make some suggestions or and let us know if we're on the right track with things. And I think that and so we're trying to figure out a good kind of method for that. I think we've kind of settled on something, but we're definitely going to have some printouts and resources, including all of the materials that were listed here, so that that people can view.
And then the start date, we keep talking about the funding and not funding and possibly and probably, but since we have that other class, the financial literacy class coming, when does that start? Because that seems to be like the do or die, that when we offer that class, we just have to offer this class anyways to be the sister to it. Because that'll give us 2 semester-long classes and 2 other 2 semester-long classes, correct?
Yes. And I don't know if Sharon wants to speak to that.
Well, the state hasn't really come out with, they're in development right now. So
For the financial literacy.
they, in order for us to make sure, like we certainly could sit tomorrow and develop a course, right? We have people who would be more than happy to contribute, develop a course. But when the state is mandating something, you have to wait for the framework or the course requirements to be developed and shared out. So they're in the draft phases of that. So remember, they only approved it in July, and we're only about 6 months in. So we don't know.
So then
And it's very frustrating.
if we have to offer this course without having that course as the sister to it, what do we do with that other semester? Those kids get study hall or
That's one
something
of our
similar?
issues.
Okay.
That's one thing the committee has really been grappling with. And, you know, I think I'll say it because I don't think it's been a secret tonight. Like I'm all in on the state approving the course. I really hope that they give an extension because that helps us. And the issue here for us in Carmel is that we have one high school with, 750 kids. We're not a 2,000 or 3,000 student high school with, a gajillion courses. So our scheduling is kind of tight, and we want to provide opportunities for our students to explore some of their passions too, not just do requirements. I think that's what some of you were alluding to. So we need to be mindful of that and, continue to bring forward like the evolution of courses available based on what kids are interested in today, not 20 years ago. So I think it's a struggle for us, but I do believe by the class of 2930, which is the first required, that's the class that's required. They'll be freshmen next year, and we're going to do it in their junior year. So if we get this extension of a year, that's great. If we don't, we have a course on the books, and we see what we can do, and we have some options that are being fleshed out in terms of how maybe we pilot the course next year, maybe we see if there's interest or not, maybe we do it in an 8th period, maybe who knows. There's like a bunch of different possibilities, but the real reality is that by the time that class that is required to have it gets to their junior year, I believe, based on the pace at which the state is working on the personal finance class, we'll have materials available to us for that, at least standards, because I've seen drafts of them go around. So that's good. But it's not, I'm not going to suggest that we pull a committee together to start developing that course until the state has the standards approved for us to know what it is we're supposed to do. Agree or don't agree with what they have, which is kind of this ethnic studies issue, right? Like controversy from day one around what is required, but how do we navigate that? So, I mean, I'll add in, I am grateful, though I believe in computer science, and kids who want to learn that should have every opportunity to learn that. I'm glad it's off the table right now as a requirement, because that would be yet another one. So we'll see what happens.
And then my last question, I'm not really sure how to articulate it, but one of the community members during their public comment mentioned, I can't read what I wrote, but it's either essential language or essential verbiage for the course. So, and I think it was tied to Unit 4. Is Unit 4 required to be in the standalone course? Because we're talking about civic engagement. Does that not fit better in the civics class that's also required? Or is that language saying that this has to be taught somewhere in your school?
No, so this is something that we included inside of the course that we created. And I think the idea of kind of came out of the idea of like kind of what is our responsibility inside of a democracy.
So like kind of the process is like history, progress we made, how to act in the future is kind of what we're grooming them towards.
I think I wouldn't use the word groom, but the
teaching, teaching,
but
guiding.
Yeah,
multiple meanings every word. Relax.
Yeah, but I will say though that I think the idea is that when you look at the community that you live in and you see that there's need, it's about really what is your responsibility within that community, and so it's not. And we went back and forth about like kind of what does this mean, right? And so we looked at service learning projects and what that could be, and I think at the end of the day though we want to make sure that students understand that just like in the past. And yes, like I know we're talking about like history and stuff like that, but it could even be recent history and understanding what people in recent history have done, when they when they look at an injustice and what are the steps. I think the other thing too though that's kind of missing, and maybe we should highlight it a little bit more in Unit 4, is that it's also the evaluation of different methods. And so when we're looking at nonviolent protests, for example, and we compare that to other types of protest, looking at, what were the end results and what were the short-term and long-term effects, and giving students the opportunity to really explore that and grapple with those in a really authentic way, but also in an environment where they can have those discussions. And I think that's really what Unit 4 is aiming at, though, too, is being able to kind of look at these things and make decisions and understand that that there's definitely better and worse ways to get outcomes. And at the end of the day though, like within a democracy, the best thing is to vote.
All right, that ties it together for me. Thank you for your presentation. If there's no other comments from my fellow board members, we'll move on to Cullen.
Can I just make one last comment? I'm so
Sure.
sorry. I love the way you just articulated course number 4, and if that could be more relatable in the title of the course, I think that would be helpful. So, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, you're up, Cullen.
Thank you. So you mentioned that there were counselors involved in the actual decision-making process and institution of the class. So did they have any comments regarding how colleges view you taking this ethnic studies class? Because I know a lot of students, especially during junior year, they're trying to get as many APs, as many honors, as many extremely rigorous courses as they can. So how would this class sort of affect their transcript, if you know what I'm talking about?
And we had those discussions as
Of
well.
course.
I think the big thing, number one, is you can't graduate if you don't have the course.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest one, is how colleges would view it, is that it's you have to have it. Now, with that said though, we did briefly talk about maybe an honors track and what that might look like. I don't think that's currently on the table right now, at least in its current iteration. We also talked about the fact that AP Hugs, which is the opportunity to take or for students to take their first AP course, by putting ethnic studies there, then it also takes away that opportunity for some students to kind of build some momentum, and show themselves that they can take other AP courses too. And so we went back and forth with it about kind of the, the pros and cons. And I don't know if we ever came up with a fully amicable solution, just because, it is a difficult thing when you have a mandate coming in telling you to change your entire schedule. I will say that we are fortunate enough to have more than 6 periods inside of a student schedule because it gives additional flexibility in comparison to schools that are on the 6-period day. And so where they're really locked in on now you just have 2 electives or something like that. And so just going back to answer your question though, we've had extensive discussions and continue to have those.
And since this is just a California mandate requiring this class, so for out-of-state colleges and acceptances in that area, do they still understand that this is a required course?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the way that those are judged is it's like kind of school by school basis, and so but there's a number of different factors when you're looking at college acceptance and how college counselors kind of read transcripts, and so it's based on kind of the local first, and then understanding kind of what's available to students as well.
And
my wife's a college counselor.
Yeah, I'll add in also, Cullen, that there's every high school in California has what's called a school profile, and in the that school profile is available to all colleges, and it shows in that school profile what the requirements are for our district, and most colleges have a holistic rubric they use internally, so they have their own approach, and they look at whatever it is that you've taken on your transcript and have a way of sort of leveling the playing field across all of their applicants, and they use this what's considered a holistic approach for their school. So anyone from California will have a school profile that says ethnic studies is a requirement, all kids must take it.
Okay, and then for credits, it'd be considered its own thing. It's not like falling into an English credit or a history credit. It's ethnic studies.
It does fall into, so once we get it approved and put it through the UC CSU system, it would be considered Area G, which is elective, and then it would have the tag as social studies. And so that goes through a separate approval process that we would have to kind of insert in the syllabus and have it approved and have the course approved through that system.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rita.
So just thinking ahead, are there MPC dual enrollment courses that kind of align with it, where students who would want to get college credit or just higher level learning is there something out there for that?
So there are, MPC does offer an ethnic studies course. I think that's part of the controversy, candidly, right? Because there's a controversy around what gets covered in those college level courses, and there's less control. We don't control that. Whereas here, we're developing a course that aligns to the desires of our community while also obviously maintaining adherence to the expectations from the state, right? So some of these things it's great feedback, but some of it may or may not be able to be adjusted enough to please everybody, right? So I would say that for now, we are safer to have an ethnic studies course that is offered at our high school with our teachers who are participating in the training that aligns to the course that we are developing. What happens in the future is, who knows, right?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all. That was an information-only item, so no action needs to be taken. Moving on to agenda item 5B, mid-year update to the 2024-25 Local Control and Accountability Plan, the LCAP, with Deputy Superintendent of Educational Services, Dr. Mary Petty.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. CUSD Board President, Trustees, and Superintendent Ofek. I'm excited to be here this evening to present to you the 24-25 LCAP mid-year update. Just as a quick reminder, the Local Control and Accountability Plan, for those of you who were not on the board, when it was adopted last June, is a plan that really outlines goals, actions, and expenditures for support of our students who really have additional needs here in CUSD. Just a little background on how the mid-year report has come about. So there is expanded and updated language in Assembly Bill 114 requiring LEAs to present a mid-year update on their LCAP and the budget overview for parents annually on or before February 28th, so we're just in time, at a regularly scheduled meeting of the governing board in our LEA. So at this meeting tonight, I will include all available mid-year outcome data related to all metrics identified in our LCAP, and also the mid-year expenditure and implementation data as far as where we are with actions. So since the LCAP, again, was approved back in June, just a reminder that the LCAP here in CUSD was written with 3 goals for the new 3-year plan. Goal 1 is all students engage in challenging, innovative, and relevant learning experiences to prepare them for college career and global citizenship. Wrapped within that first goal, we have 7 action items, and they are listed here. Number 1 is identifying and utilizing common assessment screeners, using benchmark assessment data and platforms, as well as for our instruction and intervention cycles. Action 2 is a response to intervention, which really involves staffing. Number 3, summer programs for our low-income students. Number 4, English learner supports. Number 5, part-time community liaison position that was added in. Number 6, instructional materials for intervention. And number 7 was to provide more after-school academic support. Goal 2 for CUSD is that all students will achieve personal wellness through supportive and engaging school environments that foster health, happiness, and collaboration between our schools and our families. There are 3 actions that support Goal 2. They are listed below. Wellness and social emotional programs and supports have been aligned. Action number 2 is to provide mental health services for our students. And number 3, we added a first-generation counselor to our high school. Our final goal is Goal 3. All staff will engage in valuable, high-quality professional development learning that assists them in meeting the district's academic and social-emotional goals. So those 3 actions that are aligned under Goal 3 are to ensure that we have instructional strategies and supports that are taught and trained within our staffing. Action number 2, that we have provided a multisensory structured literacy training to our staff and teachers, as well as action number 3, we have provided a platform for teachers to learn differentiated mathematics instruction. So at this point, this is the LCAP expenditure update as of December 31st, 2024. As you can see, a little over $2 million has been spent of the roughly $5 million that were aligned into the LCAP budget. To see how many dollars were aligned to each of these actions, I've also included an expenditure breakdown by goal and action on a separate item. I do believe you have that. Pancho, if you wouldn't mind. Yes, here it is. Thank you. You read my mind. Thank you. So there are 3 goals outlined here on this spreadsheet. You will see that the implementation status of each of these items is on the far right column. Most of the items are in progress. Some have been completed. Some have not started. And I would just note, I'm sure you might have this as a question, the 2 that have not started is because those items will happen in June, and budget year goes from July 1st to June 30th, so we haven't had that experience yet in our calendar.
I want
This-
to chime in
I'm
and
so
say
sorry.
that the document that we have in front of us is different from that one. There's 3
Correct.
attachments in this item.
Correct.
And this is not the one in front of you. Because I can see people looking.
The second document, thank you for clarifying. The second document outlines the metrics associated with each of those 3 goals. It was not included in the original download. I do apologize for that. So that's why you have a paper copy in front of you. Most of these metrics were presented to you in December by myself when I came up here and talked to you about the dashboard data results. So I won't belabor and go through the entire list. Most of the data has been deemed final data to report. It will go into the LCAP that you'll approve again in June. But there will be some items, if you scroll through your pages, where you will see that some of the data is still in a collection process. Thank you, Pancho, if you can go down. So on the second page, you'll see in the blue column, that means that's data that's still being either collected or really analyzed. If you don't mind going back. Thank you, Pancho. This was a very interactive presentation. So while much of our LCAP discussion focuses on funding and metrics, it's also important that we stand and take a pause and reflect on really why we have the LCAP. And really that's about our students who have additional needs in our district and how it is that this plan is going to support their needs. When I came before you in December, the final slide of my presentation said strengths and improvements. Tonight I thought I would mix it up a little bit and say that here in CUSD we have some glows and grows, right? Really important that we focus as an organization on what are some things that we're doing really well. And you know, I'm new here to Carmel Unified, and I will say there are lots of things here that we should be glowing and talking about. And starting at the top of the list, we have top performance data in ELA as well as in math. This year in particular, the chronic absenteeism and suspension rates have drastically decreased, which means that our students are in school more. We have seen substantial growth with our English learner progress. And as I mentioned last time, we really, although I've only been here 6 months, I will tell you that I can sense the dedication from our families here already, our staff, as well as community members, as we have experienced here this evening. Like all organizations, there are areas in which we grow, right? There's always an improvement cycle. Continuous improvement is really keen in when you're looking at data and how to make improvements for students. So I always start my grows and my improvement discussions with continue tos, because a lot of our staff and a lot of our colleagues here in the district office, we're already working on these things, but it's really important that we put a very specific focus on them. So I say continue. We are continuing to focus on our ELA and math performance for both subgroups of our English learners as well as our students with disabilities. We are continuing to focus on our science curriculum and instruction for all student groups. We are continuing to focus on the actions identified in this LCAP related to student wellness support, the professional development needed for our staff that's very specific and targeted for our student groups that need these additional supports, as well as interventions that are needed for our English learners, economically disadvantaged students, and our foster youth. With that said, I don't know if there are any questions.
The board received no requests for public comments. If anybody on the board has questions or comments, please go ahead.
I pretty much submitted my questions on Sunday, so I didn't get to see this, so I'll probably look at this further and probably send in some questions to Sharon.
Sure.
The only thing I wanted to focus on too is just to make sure that we do a lot of outreach to the community for our LCAP meetings and just getting stakeholder feedback. I did look at some other school districts with their LCAP process, and I printed out a checklist of steps, process steps to take. I don't know. I know in some of the responses back, we're going to be doing a survey. So I think that's going to come out at the end of the school year. Soon. Okay.
Soon.
So
Spring.
So that's my only input. I'm really happy that the LCAP started many years ago to get all the school districts to really do some outreach to the public and especially to the students that need the most help and to the families. Unfortunately, I'm going to be missing probably the Monday meeting for the strategic planning. So I had some notes that I wanted just to make sure I wanted to share today, just so looking forward. I think for feedback that I've gotten in the past too was tutoring. Tutoring was a really important need for some of our students in the outlining area, and I think that really helps with their confidence and just probably with some of their scores. And I just wanted to share, what else? And just social opportunities and emotional support for the outlining areas as well. So, but that's it really. I don't really have too many other questions. I think this is a mid-year report, so at the end of the year we'll get more
Yes,
data.
I'll come back to you in June.
Okay, because at that point I'd probably like to see more percents, numbers, just where we really
So
have
I'll
come.
jump in and share that the data that is, it's the data related to the LCAP is a year in arrears. So you have it. It's here. We presented it in October, November, December. So we are required to have certain data points, whether they're connected to our goals or not.
Okay.
We are mandated and required by the legislation, again, that anything that has a red box, either at the school level or at the district level on the California dashboard, is required to have an action associated with it in the action plans that are under each of the goals. So some of those actions are going to change next year because we'll have different red boxes, because the data from this year that we presented in October, November, December reflect different information than last year, right? So that's one thing. And then another thing that's really important to identify, I think, in terms of the difference between an LCFF funded district, which is local control formula funding, and then community funded or basic aid, is that our required expenditure on the LCAP is under $1 million of our $80 million budget. You go down the street, it's over 20 million. And it's how they get funded. And it's because their unduplicated pupil count is significantly higher. And this whole plan was developed and designed in the state of California to target unduplicated pupils, which you can see up there are English learners, economically disadvantaged students, and foster youth specifically. So it's really crucial and really critical that the services that we're putting in place for students who are in those groups that this plan is designed around are the ones who get that information and opportunity for feedback. I know in a lot of places it makes sense to just go out and canvass every place. I think that's what makes the idea of having a strategic plan that's broader and bigger than this, that addresses all of our students. Not that these students aren't important, they are, and they are. We owe it to every student in this district to serve them as best we can and remove barriers to their learning. But that I want to be clear that I think in a lot of people's minds, the LCAP is this massive thing, because of the 1,000 school districts in California, 850 of them, it is. 150 of them, which are community funded, not so much, because we have many millions more dollars being spent. And in fact, if you look here, I think it was, if you go to the previous slide, like it's $5.5 million allocated. We are required to, if you go look at the approved one from June, we are only mandated and required to provide increased and improved services to the tune of like $800-something thousand.
817,000.
Yeah, it's and that number's declined since I arrived here, by the way. It's connected specifically to those student groups. So it's critical, it's important, it's huge, it's mandated, it's required. We do all of this. And I think it's good to put it in perspective that we have a lot, like 90% of our students aren't served by this. So just I agree with you. It's really critical and important within the context of the state of California and public education. And it's important here in Carmel Unified. It can serve, frankly, a little bit like an equity plan if we, that's the idea, right? How do we remove barriers to learning for all students? So If we have that as our mindset, then we have a big strategic plan where we are doing this for everybody. And these resources that we're developing and putting in place are serving the needs of the most, of the students needing the most.
Now, the 2 spots that says not started, they're 25,000. Is that a use it or lose it, or how does, I mean, we're funding it, so what happens to that?
We will be funding those 2
Yeah.
areas.
This summer?
Yeah, for summer
Okay.
programming
Okay,
and PD offered in the summer
okay,
for goal 3.
yeah, all right, thank you.
No problem.
Go ahead, Matt.
I just want to acknowledge again the process that you've gone through, but also acknowledge the boots on the ground that are doing this work from your office, and the Lizette Paredes of the district who are doing the advocacy and the liaisonship, and who are actually doing. I remember 2 years ago when I sat at Captain Cooper in the LCAP and seeing this now come true in year-old data. Is really remarkable, and it speaks to the work that's actually happening that goes into this, regardless of the fact that it's for only 10% of our student population, that the work is happening. It is a way that we as a community do really well by our whole community by doing this. So making sure that we name those people that are doing this work and that are engaging with these action steps, it's truly, truly remarkable. And I think it's one of the highlights of how Carmel Unified does business. So thank you for this mid-year report, and I look forward to seeing how this data progresses. Again, seeing it as just a community member and parent, and then from the board perspective. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
I also just wanted to thank you and the team for all the work that's done to put together the LCAP and all of the goals and all of the strategic objectives that you outlined. They're all so important. And I think, Sharon, what you said is also incredibly important, because throughout my 6 years of time on the Board of Education, it always comes to my attention that our community doesn't understand who the target student groups for the LCAP are. I think it is a widely known misconception that people think that the LCAP is targeted at our entire student body. So Sharon, thank you for underscoring the fact that this plan is targeted at student groups, but there is a broader, goal and objective out there with all of our students with regards to the strategic plan, which encompasses all of our students, right? Even though, to Matt's point, this is 10% of our students, right? But there's so much in the LCAP that can be leveraged, student-wide. So I do just want to thank you, Sharon, for pointing that out, because I think our community needs to understand that when we are talking about the LCAP, we're talking about very specific actions that apply to very specific student groups. So thank you very much.
Go ahead, Jake.
Okay. So I'm excited. I'm my turn. So I actually want to say that for all members of the public, Matt, you are just one of the most eloquent, articulate speakers I have ever heard. And I think for the members of the public, and what I do is I collect Matt-isms, and liaisonship, that's a good one. And I don't know if I've heard that one, so I'm just collecting Matt-isms. It's just something else I do. Anyway, I really appreciate this work, and I think this is really good. And I want to highlight, though, because some of my questions, too, were about the things in that thing that were not started. But these things aren't just not happening. They're planned and not done, and I want to highlight that. And I want to highlight because my colleague, Trustee Patel, brought up outlying areas, and one of the ways that we can sorry, I don't know what I'm pointing at. We can highlight that. We can highlight that that one that's not started and we should highlight is the Kashawa Summer Camp. We do a lot of really good work. This district does a lot of really good work with those students out there, with those families, and I think and that summer camp is paid for both with LCAP and
Yes.
I'm going to call it ELOP
Yes.
dollars. And so I think
Good
that's
job.
I think that's really important to highlight, and I think the same happens in Big Sur, but I'm not going to speak to that. I don't know it as well, but I know there's a similar program that also addresses that as well. So these things, even though they may not be started, the district has this, is making sure that these things are happening. It's just not happening right now. And I want to highlight the Kashawa Summer Camp program. And then I also wanted to highlight what I think is really important and what I want to continue to advocate for is professional development in this space. And I think you have professional development that is also planned. It's noted in here that it's not started, but it is planned for the 9th and the 10th of June to have specific professional development in this specific area. Correct. And I think that is really important, and I am a huge supporter and advocate for appropriate professional development for our teachers and staff. So I hope we continue on that path. Other than that, those are all my comments. Your turn, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. I have no questions or comments, and we'll pass it to Cullen if you have any questions or comments.
I actually don't have any questions. Yeah, this is a great presentation that I don't need to ask anything. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will chime in and just say I did the calculation just now. We have more socioeconomically disadvantaged students than we have in the past, so it's not 90-10, it's 80-20. So just, yeah, I'm like, wait, I don't want anyone to, so I pulled it up just now, but that's based on the CBEDS data that was submitted in October.
Thank you. Agenda item 5C, resolution number 25-01, declaration of need for fully qualified educators with Chief Human Resource Officer Craig Chavez.
Good evening. This is an update to a resolution that is coming up before you that we must send to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing regarding the need for the addition in the area of English for a limited assignment permit for this school year, for the remainder of this school year. So this is being brought as a requirement that has to be approved by the board in its regular meeting. Not on a consent item, so it's being brought as a revision, and then once approved, we will send this off to the Commission along with some paperwork related to an individual that we're working with in this particular area.
The board received no request for public comments. If anybody would like to speak on this or ask any questions, you may have a motion to approve this item.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 25-01, revised declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2024-2025 school year as presented.
I'll second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 5D, Child Development Programs proposed for 2025-26 fee schedule with Director of Child Development Programs, Laura Dunn.
Hello, nice to see you all. I'm Laura Dunn. I'm the Director of Child Development Programs for the district, and annually we need to raise our rates to come up with inflation and to also make sure that we are able to pass on the increase to our salaries for our child development teachers and staff and whatnot, so that we have to keep that all in balance. So each year we usually recommend about a 5%. There have been years where it's more or less, depending on how the economy is doing. So the only other thing that is changing is one less day of operation with children, so that this child development staff can all attend the welcome breakfast with the rest of the district, as well as their union meetings. Finally. And all of that is scheduled on that one particular day. So those are the only two things that are changing.
The board received no request for public comments, so if there's no questions or comments, may I receive a motion?
I move to approve the Child Development Program proposed 2025-2026 fee schedule.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Begrudgingly, yes. I don't like increasing prices on, but yeah.
I understand. Thank you all.
Thank you. Agenda item 5E, RFQ number 2025-01, network equipment including installation configuration with Senior Director of Information Technology, Manny Carrera.
Good evening, all. Before I begin with items E and F, these are both E-rate projects, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the E-rate program, since we do have 3 board members. Items E and F are E-rate network infrastructure programs that, if approved, would be slated for the 25-26 school year, pending E-rate approval. E-rate is a program overseen by the Federal Communications Commission under a corporate entity called USAC. This program allows schools and libraries to receive discounts for networking equipment and services. The percentage of a discount that a district is eligible for is proportionate to the number of free and reduced meal students that attend the institution. Carmel Unified is eligible for discounts at 50% for eligible services. So I'll now begin with item E. Carmel Unified issued a request for a quote following the applicable E-rate rules and regulations to replace its core networking equipment at all sites. What core networking equipment is at its core is the equipment that allows our district's network to connect back to district office. So it's vital in order to maintain connectivity with all of our school sites. 4 vendors submitted responsive bids for the equipment, and the bids were assessed according to E-rate rules and regulations on a 100-point system, where price was the most heavily weighted factor. At this time, even though it says equipment plus installation and configuration, we will be purchasing the equipment, and we'll decide on an entity to install and configure it at a later date. After evaluating the bids on a 100-point system, we recommend awarding the contract to Converge One for a total price of $88,003.73. The total district cost after the 50% E-rate reimbursement will be $51,573.77. And again, this project is completely contingent on E-rate approval. At this time, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
The board did not receive any requests for public comments. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just simple question. So we're talking about RFQ number 2025-01.
That's correct.
Does this help the district's connectivity, internet access, or limit any internet interruptions?
Most definitely. The reason that we're replacing this core equipment is because it is at end of life. By next school year, it will be at end of life, meaning that, number one, we won't receive support or security patches for the equipment, but more importantly, it would be very difficult to obtain replacement equipment and parts now that the product is at end of life. So maintaining a modern infrastructure would definitely help our connectivity. We did see one issue very recently at Carmel River Elementary with this specific equipment, where at the middle of the day it became unresponsive, and the net result is all wired and wireless access went down. Luckily, this occurred during February break, but this is a sign that this equipment should be replaced fairly soon.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the work, and I believe that as IT professional, I'm not one, clearly, but you all are, and I appreciate all IT professionals, and I really do think that the district should do whatever it can do to acknowledge and appreciate its IT team and staff for doing what they do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. If there's no other questions, may I receive a motion?
I'll make a, sorry.
Go ahead, one of
No,
you.
go ahead, Sarah can. All right, I make a motion to recommend the Board of Education approve the authorization of staff to award the bid and contract to Converge One for $88,003.73.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 5F, E-rate RFP number 2025-02, structured cabling with Senior Director of Information Technology, Manny Carrera.
Thank you. Item F is a request for a proposal following E-rate rules and regulations. This is a more stringent version of the request for quotes that item E was. This involved a mandatory site walk to multiple district locations, including district office, maintenance operations and transportation, Tularcitos, CMS, and CHS. This RFP is for structured cabling work at 21 networking closets across various district sites. IT staff members were deployed to the sites, and we took detailed notes and photos of our networking closets. And we identified the 21 that were in most need of remediation. The cabling in these closets was done long ago. It wasn't done to industry standard. And as a group, as an IT department, we discussed what is a quick way that we can remediate this, bring all of these locations up to a professional standard, and do it at half cost. And E-Rate seemed to be the venue to do this. So the structured cabling project would enhance the physical foundation of our networking infrastructure. Three vendors submitted proposals, which were evaluated on a 100-point system, again, with price being the most heavily weighted factor. Advanced Communications and Consulting came in considerably lower than the other two bids and received the highest overall score. Their responsive bid was at $92,320.82. After applying the E-rate discount of 50% to all eligible services, the district's cost will be $47,563.87. Again, like the previous item, this project is contingent about E-rate funding approval. We did do some digging into the proposals about why there was such a substantial difference between the three bids. The cost for the equipment was roughly the same. The difference was all in labor cost between the three bids. So they just weighed their labor cost very, very, very widely. At this time, I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody else have any questions on this item? Yeah, my one question is, what was done to not industry standard? Like, what are you talking?
So in our most critical server rooms and in our data center, we have fiber that was never terminated. We have old equipment that was reused. We have ungrounded racks. So a lot of these situations make it very difficult for us to receive professional services, because as soon as professional services walks into our server rooms or walks into our data center, they see just what looks like just a bundle of cable, and they are reluctant to engage or interact with it because of fear that they're going to cause an outage by mishandling some of the fiber that's in there. Yeah, I wish if any of you would like to arrange a walkthrough, Michelle and the superintendent's office can arrange that, but this is in dire need of remediation.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, may I receive a motion?
I mean, I guess you said that the reason the quotes were, because this is what stood out to me, the reason the quotes were so different was because of the application of their labor costs.
Correct.
And so then I immediately, it kind of raises the red flag, which is, you get what you pay for, but what is, these are extreme differences.
In my experience with the public works, they're required to pay a minimum payment to them, which is the union rate for our county. And some of these may be coming from out of the county, where they go to Santa Clara County. Just in my line of work, wireman inside wireman is $50 an hour in Monterey County. It's $80 an hour in Santa Clara County. So it could vary widely. And some of these companies charge upwards of $200+ an hour.
Okay.
So to piggyback on that, what are the two more highly priced bidders? One was from San Diego, and I believe the other one was from the Bay Area. So that is one of the reasons. So travel, equipment, and that. Advanced Communications and Consulting, they're based out of Fresno, or Bakersfield. So yeah, they do have different costs. Based on the documentation submitted within the bid, they do comply with the prevailing wage standards. So yeah, they did verify and provide documentation. Additionally, we requested references from school districts that they've worked on before, and overwhelmingly the feedback was very positive.
That's great. Just for my information, do the E-rate requirements have standards for the service providers to qualify for the E-rate discount or rebate?
Not necessarily, but we do specify within our request for proposal all of the licensure and adherence to both state and federal laws that we as a district expect from people participating in bids. We have several vendors that we worked with for a long time that didn't have those certifications, and they were unable to participate, even though we know they're quality vendors. We really want this job done correctly.
Great. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, may I receive a motion?
I will move to approve and authorize the district staff to award the bid and contract to Advanced Communication and Consulting Inc. in the amount of $92,320.82.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 5G, transfer of funds from Fund 14, Deferred Maintenance, to Fund 40, Capital Outlay Fund, with Chief Business Official Yvonne Perez.
Good evening. Tonight you have a resolution in front of you, a resolution number 25-02, to transfer funds from 14 to Fund 40, and the transfer is entirely an accounting need. And so it's just moving up from one fund where we account for this type of a project into a fund where we can account for this type of a project. In the next agenda item that you have, that Dan Paul will present, will give you additional information about that. But we do need to transfer those funds, so I'm recommending approval of the resolution.
The board received no requests for public comment. Are there any questions or comments from the board? If not, may I receive a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 25-02, authorizing transfer of funds.
Second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 5H, capital project approval, CCDC and River School staff restroom expansion, with Chief Operations Officer Dan Paul.
Good evening. This agenda item ties into the last one and addresses staff restroom ratios at River School and Carmelo. Modifications at River School to address ADA accessibility issues to the health office caused the loss of one staff restroom. And at Carmelo, they now use a staff restroom for a health office /6 room. So if you look at the ratios there, current ratios, they're quite a bit higher than the other sites. The construction of one restroom at Carmelo and two at River School will bring them in line. Each project is estimated at around $450,000 and includes hard and soft costs and both design and construction contingency. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from the board? May I receive a motion to approve?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the CCDC and River School restroom expansion projects and architect contract for CCDC restroom expansion.
I'll second.
Board President Jason Remenzi.
Yes.
Board Clerk Jake Odello.
Yes.
Board Member Sarah Hines.
Yes.
Board Member Matt Glazer.
Yes.
Board Member Rita Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, public comment on non-agendized items. Members of the public may address the board regarding items or topics within the board's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda at this time. And we'll start with number 1, Juliet Norman.
Good evening. I'm Juliet Norman. I am the Associated Student Body President for Carmel Unified School District and the President of the Carmel High School Student Senate. Our Student Senate is new this year. It was formed to allow students to address issues that are important not only to us, but to our entire community. In keeping with that mission, the Senate recently passed a climate protection resolution. Through this resolution, we recognize climate change as a major challenge facing our community. We also recognize that because of its cumulative impact, destruction from climate change will have the most detrimental impacts on young and future generations. In this resolution, we call for educational and operational improvements to teach students and families about our climate crisis and address practices that contribute to climate degradation. The Senate has asked me to present you and other governing boards with our resolution. In addition to you tonight, I have also presented our resolution to the County Board of Supervisors, the City Council, and AMBAG, the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. Their responses have been very positive. As a result of these presentations, I was approached by an Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments board member with an opportunity for our school district to be part of a $64 million grant for solar panel installation, which is one of the suggested action items in our resolution. Last week, I sent an email introducing Superintendent Ofek and Chief Operations Officer Dan Paul to the representative for the solar panel funding. Dan Paul will be meeting with the representative next Wednesday. Our hope is that you will support the climate protection improvements we are calling for as common imperatives facing the communities of the Carmel Unified School District. May I please present you with copies of our resolution and information about the solar panel opportunity?
Yes, please give them to Michelle and she'll distribute them and scan them into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it right or not, but please correct me when you come up. Leila Glazier.
Hello, my name is Lila Glazier, and I am the ASB Sustainability Commissioner and the Environmental Club President at Carmel High School. Today, I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Club to discuss our hope for a rainwater catchment system at Carmel High School. If you don't know what this is, it's a relatively simple method of collecting rainwater for other uses, and you can hook it up to an irrigation system or other uses for water. The reason why this issue really appeals to us is because our science wings were designed to have one a long time ago, but it has never actually been implemented. How it would work is where the two roofs meet up, we'd have gutters, and we'd have a cistern placed there. And there's a large lawn and a lot of plants in that area, so we would be able to use that water to water those plants. I remember being a freshman in the Environmental Club, and when Mr. Moss Baldwin and the seniors asked me what projects we wanted to work on, I raised my hand eagerly and said how cool I thought our rainwater catchment system would be. But they all shared a glance, and then Mr. Moss Baldwin went on and on about how passionate he was about it, but it was just something that never had been done. But despite these failed attempts, I really decided to focus on this project starting last year. I did research and I talked to PG Middle School, who explained to me they got a cistern from Cal-Am water grants. And I also talked to Dan Paul, who said money wasn't a huge concern with the issue, but I can give you guys more info on the grants if you would like it. I want to make it clear that we are very passionate about this issue, and we'd really like to get it done before the school year ends. We've been working with MOT, but we haven't actually gone anywhere with starting the project up, even though we've discussed it a lot, but we haven't actually gotten it started, and we really want to make it clear that we really care about this issue. I think that this is completely possible, and it would be a great way to practice sustainability at school, and we could save a lot of water, as I addressed earlier, through hooking it up to the irrigation system. But some may think that this wouldn't make a huge difference, but in a sense, it would be really good for demonstration purposes, and it's a really simple way to show students and administrators how important sustainable practices are. We live in a beautiful area, and it's really important that as a school and district, we're leaders in going green, and this would be a great way to start. I also want to make it clear that we don't fully want to place this on the shoulders of the district. This year, I have a very strong and eager group of environmental club members who would be more than willing to help out with any planning needed and implementing the project. And it's not just that they're willing, but it would actually be beneficial for them and the club in order to be involved in a project that would have such a good difference on the campus. Thank you for your time, and let me know if you have any questions or would like to further work on the issue.
Thank you for taking the time to come tonight, and sorry for pronouncing your name wrong.
It's okay.
And if you have documents, will you give them to Michelle? She'll scan them and she'll distribute them to us.
I don't have any.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
thank you.
Next item is item 7, informal report with Superintendent Sharon Ofek, if needed. That did not get canceled. Next item 8, board committee reports. These are routine committee updates from CUSD Board of Education representatives for Community Human Services, Mission Trails Regional Occupation Executive Board, and the Monterey County School Boards Association Executive Council Legislative Representative Liaison. We'll start with the Community Human Services representative, Rita Patel.
So we met twice so far, January 16th and February 20th. I sent Michelle both copies. I think January 20th didn't come through, so it's okay. So
We
both
have-
meetings. Oh, you have both of them?
We have February and January
January?
16th.
Oh, perfect.
February
Okay.
20th, January
So
16th.
I'm not going to read through them, but I just printed these out so you guys could just read them on your own. And I've talked to the board just to ask them if there's any school-specific items that they would like for us to participate in, like any action items where there's volunteering or helping, some folks with computers and things like that. So they're going to, in the next brief, we'll include something that might be targeted more to schools and what we can do to help. And then also what was really interesting is we did a tour on February, I think it was either 7th, and we toured all 7 facilities, and it was really worth putting eyes on the buildings and the programs. So that was, that's what I have.
Rita, can you just give a real quick synopsis of what Community Human Services does for the district? Because I think some people might
Yeah,
not
well,
know.
we have, they have a program in Salinas and then on Monterey Peninsula, and they help and place displaced families, unhoused families, and I guess individuals who have maybe some substance abuse, and they help get them back on track. And so they're pretty much rely on government funding and also donations. So it's a really good service. And some of the school districts, they do have students and some families that need housing, and so they help with that.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Mission Trails Regional Occupation Executive Board Representative Jake Odello.
Thank you. February is CTE Awareness Month, so I'd like to take this moment to thank all of our students, teachers, and staff working together to optimize CTE pathways, classes, projects, etc. So February is the month that we recognize CTE, and it's Awareness Month every year. In terms of grant awards, the JPA received good news regarding its 2 grant applications from the fall. The preliminary allocation for CTE-IG round 10 is just about $4.9 million. This is a nearly $1 million improvement from round 9. It is important to note that the fact that we applied as a JPA resulted in a positive consideration over $900,000, so strength in numbers. The JPA also received a positive result for its round 7 for the K-12 Strong Workforce Grant, amounting to $1.6 million. In terms of industry advisory, the JPA hosted its first ever all-sector advisory in November. There were 150 participants, including over 100 K-12 educators, 34 industry members, and 14 community college partners. This event was hosted by Hartnell College and included a dinner, general session, and 11 industry advisory breakouts. The California Master Plan for Career Education is an initiative that aims to prepare all learners for a rapidly evolving workforce. It calls for a coordinated approach spanning state and regional efforts to streamline career education and training, making hands-on learning and skills-based hiring more accessible. The plan emphasizes creating diverse career pathways that extend from high school through adult training, ensuring that everyone, regardless of background or whether they pursue a college degree, can access well-paying, fulfilling jobs in an economy shaped by new technologies and changing demands. We are awaiting the full plan to be published. That is all.
Thank you very much, Jake. Wrapping up the board committee reports, we'll hear from Monterey County School Board Association Executive Council / Legislative Representative, Matt Glazer.
So I attended the MCSBA Executive Council meeting. It was the first of the year, and there were a lot of new school board members. So it was a lot of administrative business, the hiring of the new Executive Council leadership, so the executive officers, the president, vice president, and secretary. The MCSBA also talked about their annual achievement awards, in which they recognize organizations that are doing, there's a whole mission that's stated for the recognition of the achievement awards. And then also discussed was the annual meeting, which is upcoming next month in at Hartnell in Salinas. I think it's I don't remember the date off the top of my head. But it's an in-person annual meeting with the achievement recognition dinner that I intend to attend.
Cool. Thank you guys for taking time out of your schedules to go and represent us at these 3 different agencies. I think all 3 of them do great work. Item 9, closed session. Before adjourning into closed session, the board offers an opportunity for public comment. Today we did not receive any, so I'll now announce the items. Item 9A, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, subsection D2, 1 case. Item 9B, public employee discipline, dismissal, release pursuant to Government Code 54957, subdivision B1. And the board did not receive requests for public comments, so we adjourned to closed session at 7:43 p.m. Coming out of closed session, the board reports the following. For item 9A, the board met with legal counsel and provided direction. For item 9B, the board met with district staff who provided an update. I adjourn this meeting at 9:07 p.m. Thank you.